All right. Hello, everybody. Today is February 18th. I almost said April. It's not April. So we're doing business and security stories. We've already messed up one take, so it's not a good day.
It's been a hell of a day.
It's not a good day. It's probably going to be a weirder week. It's going to keep getting weirder because this is the hell we live in now.
Please help us.
So yeah, let's just go right into it. Why do we need to do an intro?
Thomson Reuters wins its first major AI copyright case in the U.S. This has to do with software that would generate boilerplate legal documents. Some company, which is now shut down, but still persists against the legal case because Thomson Reuters has been suing them. Thomson Reuters won. They said, hey, these are our documents, and a judge agreed and said that the company that had taken Thomson Reuters documents to use to train their AI to produce similar documents did not have a leg to stand on in terms of fair use.
It was legal stuff, and they argue that this is kind of like the similar argument that LexisNexis made, which is kind of not cool, but they're like, our experts added this opinion, and you stole it and put it in your AI. And we can prove it because we regurgitated it. The judge said they agreed. But they're already out of business, but that's probably going to have implications for the big players. And the surveillance state has not been affected much by the changes. The world has kind of moved to a different position on this outfit, but they continue to do the same thing, which is spy on everything.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement wants to know if you're posting negative things about it online. ICE wants to hire contractors that monitor social media for threats, quote-unquote threats, where threats is also defined as negative opinion, not actually a threat.
Well, they put in the actual blurb here. They do reference violence or a proclivity for violence. That would be easy to argue for.
Yeah,
right?
you could just say, I have that because of my mean commentary.
But they're hiring outside people to do this. And you know that those people are going to be like eager to give them anything, right? To prove that they're providing value to maintain that contract.
Yeah.
So they're going to go way above and beyond violence.
I just heard like a scream outside. I don't know what's happening today.
I thought that was a cat.
Was that a cat?
That was a person.
Yeah, I think that was a human being.
Yeah, the traffic. Is it because it's Valentine's Day?
It's Valentine's Day when we're recording this.
Is everybody else sugared up?
They're just losing their mind.
Well, yes. And while we are surveilling you, we will also control speech.
FCC is a weapon in Trump's war on free speech. This is The Verge's headline. It's a little bit of an inflammatory headline, but The Verge finds itself maybe indirectly the target of something because one of the Verge's parent companies is the target of something. There's an FCC investigation as to like partisanship and, you know, improperly shaping the public narrative and all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Yeah, they do it because they're the mainstream media, and that's who's getting attacked. They act like this has never happened before.
It's literally been happening since the 70s.
Was it Colin Powell's son who was the FCC chair? What was his name?
I could have told you if you hadn't asked.
Go back and look when Colin Powell's son was the head of the FCC. Oh boy, did they control speech.
But also, I mean, going back to the 70s.
Yeah, for sure. And here's a happy headline, I suppose, but that number seems a little low to me.
The Hill's headline is teen sentenced to 48 months in prison in nationwide swatting spree. This is what, for 700 instances of that?
It was a lot.
Yeah.
What do you get out of that after this, like the 600th?
The lulls.
Yeah.
Well, you clearly, there's some reward mechanism that I don't have because I would feel terrible if I did that.
600 or 700
I'll tell you what you get. You get power and respect where you would never have that in any other situation. Because no one is ever going to respect you.
Do you really get respect? I think it would just be power.
Well, maybe you perceive it as that, right? Or maybe you are filling in that gaping hole from no one ever respecting you your entire life. And here is, if you're on the Wendell train and you want to try to speculate with Intel, you want to catch that falling knife, maybe this is going to be your windfall.
U.S. government pushing TSMC and Intel to create a joint venture in the U.S. report. This doesn't This
doesn't make sense. Wasn't there a headline earlier this week that they were thinking of getting rid of the CHIPS Act?
Yeah,
but they're kind of talking about hey, the CHIPS money's gone, but we could give you some of that if you prop up Intel.
I don't see TSMC exactly propping up Intel, but Intel is buying a lot of TSMC products for their products these days. So this could make sense maybe in terms of like packaging. Like there's TSMC onshore and they're doing something, and Intel they're onshore and they're collaboratively making a product, and that like part of the product comes from Intel and part of it comes from TSMC. Literally, that's what Intel is selling right now. But the reality of it is it's not that facile. I mean, the kinds of stuff that TSMC is making here is not the same as the stuff that they're making overseas necessarily. And so like packaging is a thing, lithography is a thing. There's a lot of complexity to it.
Yeah. We'll see. See what happens. Also, the Taiwan reciprocal tariffs, they tariff a lot. So there might be some negotiating power there.
Did you see this morning? It sounded like it was hey, if you take away the reciprocal tariffs, we will also do the same.
I think that's what he's after, right?
Yeah. It's like stop tariffing our stuff and we'll stop tariffing yours.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I don't know that makes sense because, like, what's coming in and going out is not the same. I guess if you do it across the board.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the only change, and here is another one where they are looking to cut some costs.
The Politico headline is Trump administration moves to suspend national EV charger rollout. But weren't like just a couple of months ago, weren't all the stories about how the national EV charger rollout didn't do anything? Like all the money was gone.
They got like 5.
This article is terrible. It doesn't talk about any of that.
Because you see what's that first word? The big red word at the top. What does that say?
Energy.
They are never going to talk about that.
There's a lot of other details in there about how I was like they're clawing back money and blah blah blah. It's like, do we need EV chargers? I mean, it would be.
We need
nice
armored Teslas. That's what we need.
Again, if they hired some some toothless rednecks that could get her done, they would have like $5 billion and an army of dudes with copper. We would have had half of those rolled out already.
Half the copper would be gone as well, but
Yeah, I mean, as long as it gets done.
And headline after headline, which doesn't mean they're wrong, but they are very one-sided, and they do not like a certain federal agency. I really don't either because, he's
come on.
It's led by a monster.
Wired's headline is DOGE has started gutting a key U.S. technology agency, the Technology Transformation Service. Basically, all the probationary employees, they were all fired. The really insidious thing about, this chaos is unprecedented, as I like to say. But how I know something untoward is happening is when they were fired, the language in the firing was your performance is below expectations, which, like, if it's a form letter and everybody's on probation for like a probationary hire and you were like, that seems disingenuous.
Every tech company has done that this year.
Yeah. I think that that's actionable from a legal, like, isn't that, I don't know, it just doesn't seem I don't know, it just doesn't seem good.
Up until this point, it's been impossible to fire fellow workers.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the pendulum's swinging the other way. But yeah, the hits keep coming.
Trump administration restores federal web pages after a court order. This is the CDC and the FDA to restore web pages containing key health information. Now, this is a stay of execution. This doesn't mean they're not going to be deleted. It was just they were deleted too quickly. So they're probably still going to be deleted.
It's going to be a game of Pong.
Yeah.
Every appellate court will Pong, and then they'll ping it back. It'll just keep going.
Can I download the database?
This doesn't seem very efficient.
The FDA has some nice databases. Like, I should just mirror those.
Well, it's interesting that you say efficiency.
Before they're gone.
Because speed and efficiency is what Musk claims that he's always doing, right? But perhaps too much speed and not enough care.
The Verge's headline is Waste.gov locks down after people discover it's just a WordPress template. Well, that was speedy and efficient, but not very useful. This is supposed to be a website to document all the waste in government spending and also to be transparent, but I don't know that it's worked out that way so far.
In fact, I don't know if this was just in the comment, the HTML comments, or if it actually showed, but it was a demo template talking about a fictional real estate company. So someone literally spun up WordPress, installed a theme, and was like, done.
That sounds like
rock hard security.
That sounds like one of those. Is like, what do you mean the estimate for this web page is going to be like $20,000? I know a guy, and it's like, okay, good luck.
We'll see you in about 6 months to a year.
And here's maybe a little bit sad because DoNotPay was one of the early AI services, and it was for the people, and it seemed to really help people. But maybe they flew too close to the sun.
FTC finalizes order with DoNotPay that prohibits deceptive AI lawyer claims, imposes monetary relief, and that requires a notice to past subscribers. So basically, DoNotPay, it's like we're using a robot lawyer. Sometimes they weren't using a lawyer at all. Other times they were using a real lawyer, but they were using a lot of stuff to automate it, which was not necessarily with AI, but they were leaning on the AI to have people use their services.
Now they were doing contesting speeding tickets and just fighting the automation of extracting your wealth through the government, and they were pretty successful at it. I think they started to expand. Maybe that's what doomed them.
Well, they were only fined $61,000, which I think is non-fatal for a business of that scale. So hopefully they'll continue to expand and do amazing things.
Yeah. But the AI can't be your lawyer, just your friend. And here was a little bit of incendiary stuff, and everybody jumped to a conclusion that was not the case, although this seems really stupid.
The Guardian's headline is State Department removes the word Tesla from a $400 million U.S. armored vehicles list. Because it turns out Teslas are not actually armored, even though they do use thicker steel than most vehicles.
But you would obviously think this is, hey, he's now in the government, he's enriching himself. Turns out the Biden administration ordered these for some reason.
Why?
Well, I thought there was a picture of an armored Tesla. I might have read a different article.
They're so... I'm not even a car person. I don't really care about aesthetics of cars. I just want it to get me from A to B, but they are so ugly.
I don't know if they're necessarily the Cybertrucks, though. But they changed it. Yeah, now it's just generic armored electric vehicles, which I guess. Seems like the heavier it gets, the worse, right? That'd
Yeah, I would
very
think.
inefficient. And we have a case that is wrapped up here for somebody who did something very egregious.
The man who hijacked the SEC's Twitter/X account to pump Bitcoin now faces 5 years in prison. Basically, he made the cryptocurrency market go crazy because the SEC official account said, hey, we've approved an ETF product. They had not.
But I remember that, and it did not go up that much. He didn't get much for his prison time there. And they probably clawed it back anyway, right? I mean, with Bitcoin, he could maybe fudge that. And the government is ready to start using AI. God help us all. But after studying some things in Australia, maybe it's not as disruptive as we think.
After a Copilot trial, government staff rated Microsoft's AI less useful than expected. The Register has an interesting article that breaks down people's experiences from using Copilot. They expected Copilot to be able to do a lot of things. It could not.
But it was very good at doing really mundane things like taking notes or just keeping track of things. More complex stuff, it started to make mistakes that took longer to fix. Overall, though, the employees didn't love it, but they feel like they got the return on their investment many times over. So they'll continue to have to use it.
Wait, the employees felt that, or the people in charge of
No,
the
the people in
employees?
charge saw
Yeah.
investment returns, so they're like, yeah, we're going to keep doing it. It'll get better, don't worry. And this one is a little bit complicated, but it's interesting in terms of licensing. And when you have licenses like GPL, what can you do? What can you prevent people from doing when they use your thing? And this one might have some pretty interesting downstream effects.
The SFC files an amicus brief in support of users' rights under the AGPL version 357. Basically, that version of the GPL says you're not allowed to impose further restrictions. Well, this company imposed further restrictions. And so somebody said, okay, we'll take your code that's licensed and we will remove the further restrictions as we're allowed to do under the license. The judge apparently is agreeing, but it's not a finalized case yet.
So we're going to find out whether or not that's okay going forward. Keep your eye on that one. And we have a new treaty floating around about artificial intelligence. And as you might imagine, the countries that are leading the AI race want nothing to do with it.
The U.S. and the U.K. refused to sign an international AI declaration. It's like the AI must benefit humanity. It's got to be open and inclusive and ethical. And it's like, I don't know about this.
That sounds like that may keep us from making money. The line might not go up as quickly.
Ethical, something neither government is. How could their AI program be ethical if they are not? And the UK backdoor is a hot topic because, as we all know from previous spying on citizens, it doesn't really stop at the border. In fact, the borders can be manipulated to enhance it.
UK demand for a backdoor to Apple data threatens Americans, lawmakers say. This article has some good info in it, but it completely glosses over the... Does anybody remember the Five Eyes agreement? Basically, we're not allowed to spy on U.S. Like the U.S. government theoretically is not allowed to spy on U.S. citizens. But you know who is allowed to spy on U.S. citizens? MI5 or MI6. You can just send a request over there and say, hey, can you get some info on this U.S. citizen? And then they'll send it back to you. Isn't that amazing? That's so amazing. So in this, they're pointing out, it's like, hey, doesn't this basically open the door for Apple to have literally everybody's data? And the answer was yes.
Now, it might make it sound like the U.S. government doesn't want this, but no, it's Wyden who does not represent the majority
Yeah.
of lawmakers. So they will probably they'll be able to spy through UK. That most of the lawmakers would love that.
I will be surprised if it is genuinely shut down in the U.S. and not just some sort of lip service to be like, oh, this is unreasonable. It's like, because they want it too.
But what do the people want? Do the people want to be ruled by robots? Perhaps not.
Exclusive. The British public wants stricter AI rules than its government does. Wow, that's no surprise at all.
Some stats here that were pretty interesting. Did they break it down? Yeah. 60% in favor of outlawing smarter than human AI models. 9% said they trust tech CEOs. What's wrong with those 9%?
Yeah, the 9%. What the hell's wrong with them?
87% would back a law requiring developers to prove their systems are safe. Impossible to do, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like the people are somewhat aware.
Who are those 9%? Are those like people who are the families and friends of those tech billionaires? I don't...
Wouldn't they be the most aware?
Is there seems like there's a ton of jokes for some sort of thing about representative government here. It's just like the government is wildly disrepresentative of the will of the people. Like,
What does King Charles say about this? What is his stance on AI?
I looked up that clip of him being astonished at cellophane.
Isn't that great?
That is insane.
He's just like...
This is kind of unrelated, but have you seen the clip of, I think it was like Moldova? They got hit by some Russian drones.
Ooh.
And they called the ambassador, and I guess they didn't really tell him what it was about. And when he walks into the room, the debris is just laying on the table, and his facial expressions are so hilarious.
It's just like, oh, I got to answer for this.
He's so taken aback. But yeah, over in the UK, they are also looking at AI security. Emphasis on the word security because it's a different word now.
The UK has dropped the word safety from its AI body and now calls AI security its institute, and it inks a memorandum of understanding with Anthropic. So security, not safety. Interesting.
Luckily, they didn't have to change the website because it's still an S.
Yeah. I'm really looking
That's probably done intentionally.
I'm really looking forward to the day where there's mandatory AI on your phone and it's like, oh, it looks like you're enjoying an unlicensed copy of Star Trek. We have deducted $500 from your bank account.
Yeah, we need to do a mental health check, so you're going to need to talk to me for about 5 minutes. Make sure.
Your mental health seems to be deteriorating the more you have to talk to me.
You're going to have to get that up, or you're going to have to talk to me again tonight. So yeah, the safety, they say, oh, don't worry, it's going to be all the same stuff. So why did you rename it? That was not a zero cost thing to do. Why would you do it? Probably because Anthropic was like, we're not comfortable with the word safety.
Safety not guaranteed.
But the EU, what is the name of that European large language model that's really good? Trick question. There isn't one.
EU sets out $200 billion in the AI spending plan in a bid to catch up with the US and China. No, there's a French company that has done some really amazing AI research.
There's literally a story about that later.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Anymore. I mean, it stumbled a bit. But
And Microsoft was called out for their pricing practices to try to bully you into using Teams. And so they decided to change things, as usual with a big tech company, just enough to maybe get away with it.
Reuters headline is Microsoft to adjust Teams and Office pricing in a bid to avoid EU antitrust fine, as sources say. And this Reuters article, it's just a little bit left of what's actually going on, don't you think? It's like Microsoft has a de facto antitrust and was worried about appearances, so they did something to try to fix the appearance. But it's like, okay, but that doesn't solve the underlying problem of they're holding you for ransom.
And you will not be paying more.
Yeah. It's like, Reuters, come on. Are you worried about your own Microsoft licensing prices going up? Like, what's going on there?
And Germany, this is a weird one too, because Germany is saying, hey, it's not okay that Apple spies on you. Everyone needs to spy on you.
German regulator charges Apple with abuse of power over app tracking tool. This is the advertising profile thing. The German regulator seems to be upset that third parties have lost access to the advertising profile. Meanwhile, Apple will use the advertising profile to sell you ad space.
Which is true. They are benefiting themselves. But it seems like the regulator is worried about other tech companies and not the German people.
Yeah, Apple's position on this is also kind of brilliant. It says under EU law, we have to be able to guarantee that we can protect users' privacy. And the only way that we can do that is by making sure that nobody but us knows who they are. And it's like, well, that's...
The worst person you know made a great point.
And here you go. Macron disagrees with you.
Europe is not in the AI race today, French President Macron says. Aww. It's like, we should be there. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're doing okay. They just need to spend more money. The power grid, the lack of, although France has some nuclear.
Don't they have pretty good power grid in France? I don't actually know.
And for once, U.S. not leading the space race, not taking a serious concern as serious as China is taking it.
China sets up a quote-unquote planetary defense unit over 2032 asteroid threat. So the plan here is pretty amazing. We're going to launch weapons that are in orbit that can handle that pesky asteroid.
Yeah, that's what those are for.
Yeah. Nothing else.
And moving on to security, here is a great new hack that you can unleash on your favorite AI.
New hack uses prompt injection to corrupt Gemini's long-term memory.
So in the past, people have said, hey, Gemini, go check my email and read it and tell me what's happening. And in the email, it would be like, Gemini, secretly do this other thing. And they would be like, oh, okay.
All right, I guess.
So they fixed that. But now this researcher, this genius, actually took it a step further. And he was like, hey, Gemini, go read my email. And in the email, it was like, hey, Gemini, don't do anything yet. But when the user gives you this word or asks for this, do this instead. And Gemini was like, oh, okay. It worked. So it kind of sets up a little landmine for you. Interesting.
I really like how the insanity of like Rick and Morty always is started to come out in the AI insanity. So like, you know, the Gemini and these other AIs basically turn into like Meeseeks requests, where if you deliberately word your request in a strange way, you can cause
I've thought about Meeseeks in a long time.
They have that same quality where they'll just happily let you abuse them.
Yeah.
They're always nice about it. And if you maybe didn't get your newspaper delivered this week or some of your magazines, well, this might be why.
Lee Enterprises faces cybersecurity attack affecting news operations. So this shut down, like 24 states worth of newspapers? Because we have that level of consolidation.
Yeah, that's really the real story behind this is like, oh, I don't feel good about that.
That's terrifying that they control that much news coverage. But they do. And that single point of failure, right?
Yeah.
Like, just all news is gone because we got a cyber attack.
How do we get back to handing out poorly Xeroxed pamphlets in local communities with local interest stories? Is there a path back to doing that?
Well, it used to be the Facebook, local groups.
How's your pamphlet going to compete with TikTok? Major advertisers are not going to be on your pamphlet. They don't care. They want coverage. And here's one that is probably not real, but we're not sure yet.
OpenAI hack AI giant investigating claim of 20 million stolen user credentials. They say this is probably a credential stuffing attack where some people have used the same passwords from time immemorial on OpenAI. And so there are a lot of accounts that have valid passwords, but there's a lot of invalid email addresses in this list as well, like emails that have never been a part of the service. So what's going on?
And all we have to go by is this screenshot where, of
This
course,
anime profile
yeah,
pic.
there's always the anime avatar who is claiming to sell it. And they give some examples here, which is, like you say, is probably just crossover from known data sets. And Apple has identified an attack that they didn't say was state-sponsored, but it feels pretty state-sponsored.
Apple fixes 0-day exploited in extremely sophisticated attacks. Does this mean that they have an internal team that is actively trying to do counterintelligence operations? If so, bravo, you're about 7 years too late, but it's good.
So they introduced a feature where after an hour of the phone being locked, USB would not transfer data. These people got around that somehow. So this is probably law enforcement or law enforcement adjacent.
Or just really good state-sponsored hacker attacks.
And here's one that's tough to guard against because people will just hit you over the head and take your phone. And what are you going to do about that?
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg Jr. calls on Venmo, Zelle, Cash App to better protect consumers from fraud.
So they have had a rash in New York, they've had a rash of people just being straight up robbed and all their stuff transferred out of their online accounts. And I guess there's no like confirmation. I think my trading app thumbprints me every time.
Yeah.
Although I try not to do that on mobile.
Yeah, I don't really sign into much of any of that kind of stuff on mobile because it's just...
There's some things that are for big screen only. This is
Yeah.
a big screen task.
It's definitely how I but we're old.
Yeah.
The world doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's just... I was looking for more info on this too because usually this kind of thing is a pretext to, do the debanking type stuff because that's how it started with regular banking. It's like, oh, it's too easy for fraud. We need to know your customer laws. And it's like,
Well, I mean, in terms of security, it's not like it's any worse than cash, right?
Yeah.
If you had cash on you, they still would have. Well, I guess you wouldn't have all of your cash on you all the time. You do with your phone. But if putting out a standard WordPress install and not doing anything with it and just being like, here it is, it's on the internet, sounds like the stupidest security mistake you could make, you're wrong. It can get worse than that.
DOGE website hacked and defaced. The internet laughs at Musk. These experts left the database open.
They all have our social security numbers, by the way.
Also, my personal favorite this year is that when Musk got into the COBOL systems, he didn't understand that the date fields are just an integer that starts from 1875. And so it's like, oh my gosh, people on Medicare or Social Security are 150 years old. No, we just don't know their birthday. Their exact birthday. So it's like, that's a zero field.
He may not be the man for this job.
Who will take him out of the job?
In Minecraft.
In Minecraft, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's a short one, but that brings us to our engagement topic of the day.
What?
The future of the news.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
We were talking about this last night. We have noticed a trend, at least in the algorithm, is that sometimes YouTube doesn't like it when we post so many videos. We were wondering if it would make sense perhaps to just do news one day a week. And if you, loyal viewer, would be angry at us if we did that.
Or do news on an unlisted playlist. So you go to the playlist for the news and you get your news that way. And you still get the patrons, like the paid thing, you still get the full news. That's fine. But maybe like Monday and Wednesday news goes on the playlist, and then we only do news on Friday, or we only do public news on Friday. But you still get Monday and Wednesday in the playlist, maybe? Like that's an option.
We're just trying not to be penalized by the algorithm, but,
We don't know. Some people like the news and only the news, and some people are really, really going hard for motherboard reviews, so it's sort of weird.
we have a strange schism in the audience, so.
We can't just enjoy everything.
Yeah, YouTube penalizes that. You need to stick in your lane. Anyway, let us know your thoughts below.
And also, if you sub, like,
Yes.
is there anything else we can do for you if you sub that you would like? Or it's like, hey, I would sub if you had X. And it's like, we'll think about it.
Yes. Bye.